she's gone. But it is, they took everything from her and at the last minute stripped that little 4-year-old of her pride.
This is James and Mary Mast, married with a family. These are their neighbors, Courtney Almond and Ethan Mast. Together, they tried to rid a 4-year-old girl of a demon they believed was possessing her, and in the process, ended her life. Let's dive into the disturbing case of the psycho parents who killed their baby during an exorcism. When Jessica Mast was discovered in a bedroom by police, she was already deceased. What they found shocked officers and the world alike, as the fragile body of this young girl was covered in bruises and had ruptured blisters on her legs. Detectives could also see what they described as belt marks on her body, which could have only come from severe beating. Her fathers told the officers that their neighbors, Ethan Mast, who is not related, and Courtney Almond, had taken their daughter to an icy cold pond, dunked her into it several times. That water must have been freezing. What kind of person thinks it's okay to do that? Jessica was wrapped in a blanket and taken to a bedroom back at their house, but the damage was already done, and sadly, she did not survive. Ethan and Courtney were partners who lived across the street from Jessica. They were both immediately arrested and then charged with second-degree murder, as well as charges for beating Jessica's kid brother, Nathaniel, and her mother. Thankfully, the youngest brother, Justin, was found to be unharmed. What could have led to such an unspeakable crime? And how could her parents have allowed this to happen? Could you imagine any parent standing by and simply watching this abuse take place? These questions would be put to James and Mary, as they were also arrested on child endangerment charges, despite their claims that they had been controlled by their neighbors and coerced into following their orders.
Sheriff Eric Knox tells me that he's confident that the department has made all the arrests they need to in this case, but it's the matter of what charges they'll face that's still under investigation. A big part of that will be the autopsy results from Jessica Mast. When those are completed, it could determine that new charges are filed against them.
This is an isolated incident. Some people try to say that this was a cult because they've used the word demon, and obviously demon and God in the same sentence, would cause speculation for imaginations to run wild. But there's no evidence of anything other than this family and, basically two families.
In a town like Lincoln with only 19,000 residents, rumor and gossip can spread quite easily. Many people talk about the neighbors being part of some kind of cult, but these rumors have been denied by the local police as nothing more than speculation. The Gospel Light Fellowship in Lincoln have distanced themselves from these rumors and held vigils in Jessica's memory.
Neighbors in Benton County honored the girl's memory last night with a vigil. Court documents say she was found dead at the family home on December 20th. She'd been severely beaten and dunked in an icy pond as part of what appeared to be a religious-type episode.
I just hope that if anybody has any inkling that anything like that is going on in someone's life, that they would step in and take the right measures, contact someone, get them help.
The sick campaign of abuse against Jessica began weeks before she died. The horrible things this poor little girl and her brother must have gone through in that time are heartbreaking to even think of. Both Jessica's parents and their neighbors attended the same church, and James Mast claimed that the couple had told them Mary had been possessed and was in danger of passing that demon on to others. From here, they began what they called discipline, which is a twisted excuse for severe beatings. And these were not just restricted to Jessica. The parents were forced to watch as Jessica and her brother were subjected to surveillance cameras placed inside the Mast home by Ethan and Courtney allowed them to spy on the family whenever they wanted. They had absolutely no privacy in that house anywhere. They were constantly living under the watchful eye of people who may try to harm them if they didn't do what they wanted. It was almost like they were living in prison in their own home. Yet, they didn't cry for help. Why they didn't remains a mystery. The Mast family could be eating dinner or just relaxing together, and Ethan and Courtney could just walk into their house. They didn't even need a reason to do this, and they probably made one up so that they'd have an excuse to deliver their sick forms of punishment. And to cover their tracks, they would disconnect the cameras. making sure there would be no video evidence and no witnesses. During all of this, James was forced to watch or face punishment himself. It's sad to think about the horrors these children must have gone through during this time. Horrors their parents allowed to happen. Things were only going to get worse. December 19th, 2020. Ethan and Courtney returned to the masked house for one last day of terror. This time, James and Mary were also told to harm their own daughter. After a long day of beatings, some with her own father's leather belt, Jessica would be taken to the local pond. Here, Ethan, Courtney, and even James all played a part in dunking her into the pond in the water's freezing temperature. All this cruel abuse they claimed was some kind of exorcism, and it ultimately cost this little girl her life. Both the neighbors and Jessica's parents would stand before a judge and face the consequences of their terrible actions.
One by one, 3 of those accused of playing a part in the death of Jessica Mast came to court. Her parents, James and Mary Mast, remain in jail for allegedly letting their neighbors, Ethan Mast and Courtney Aumann, abuse them for weeks.
For their crimes, Ethan and Courtney were charged with second-degree murder, 3 counts of first-degree assault, and more. Jessica's parents are facing charges of child endangerment, along with several others. They were also forbidden from attending Jessica's funeral, remaining behind bars.
Yeah, Brian, criminal complaints for the 4 adults charged in this case paint an absolutely horrifying picture of what was going on in that house.
They have also lost custody of Nathaniel and Justin, who have been placed in the safety of foster care, free from abuse, and hopefully on to happy and healthy lives. One thing I noticed in this case is the behavior of Mary Mast as she leaves the courtroom. Mel Pleasant, who was there that day, described how it was hard to see the suspects face to face. Speaking of Jessica's mother, she said she laughed when she left the courtroom, and I find nothing funny, not one thing funny about this case, about her daughter's death. I don't know about you, but there's something about that smile that completely creeps me out. Both James and Mary have maintained that they were forced into their actions, or in this case, lack of actions, after being beaten and threatened. But that smile tells me something totally different altogether. Pleasant was not only there that day to observe, she had come as a part of a group that is to help others find justice.
Tiffany Hill and Mel Pleasant are advocates for child victims in Springfield. With her parents in jail, the two say it's important someone stand up for what happened to Jessica.
Jessica Mast may have had her life tragically cut short, but it is comforting to know that some in the community refused to let her memory fade and fought for the justice that she deserves. Is it possible that through manipulation and by taking advantage of the Mast's religious ideals, their neighbors may well have managed to convince this couple into committing these shocking crimes? In court papers, Mary had said that their neighbors had been religiously motivated.
The only thing we have is what they're telling us, and they were doing it in the name of discipline. Disciplining the family was their quote. There's a huge difference between discipline and
Ethan and Courtney didn't see themselves as beating an innocent girl. They saw themselves beating a demon. To justify their actions in this way only makes the case even more disturbing. Could you watch as someone did this to your children? Something doesn't seem right, and we may never know exactly what. What we do know is that Ethan Mast pleaded guilty as a part of a plea agreement. This will see him face fewer charges, one for second-degree murder and the other for first-degree assault. Not only this, it will see him face a life sentence of up to 30 years, but with a chance of parole in 10. Despite Courtney being implicated as encouraging the abuse against Jessica, her attorneys were trying to paint a very different picture of her.
Courtney comes from a good family in Pennsylvania. She's got no prior criminal